That was a great visit. Actually, something like this is said by practically every business retention and expansion visitor after their first visit. The following guidelines will help you collect high-quality data on the opinions and perspectives of business owners. Without good data, you can't do an effective job at business retention and expansion, and unless the volunteers are enjoying the process, they won't complete all the visits. I'm Michael Darger, Community Economics Specialist at the University of Minnesota Extension. To begin, let's look at some guidelines to follow when doing the visits. Then we'll move on to do a role play that shows an example of a business visit. And finally, you'll evaluate what the interviewers did correctly and incorrectly in the role play. First, let's look at tips on scheduling the business visit. 1, you and your partner are usually responsible for scheduling the visits. Don't rely on the program coordinator to do this. Here's a short introduction you might use when making your call. You can adapt it to whatever works best for you. It might go as follows. Good morning, this is Michael Darger. Recently, you received a letter from the Minnesota Falls Economic Development Authority on a business retention and expansion program. The program involves volunteers like me visiting with business owners to get their opinions on local economic development issues and to review the survey that was mailed with the letter. My partner and I would like to schedule a visit with you next week. What would be a convenient time for you? 2, be sure to call within a week and do your visit within the assigned time period. 3, the owner or operator of the business should be interviewed. It is okay for a spouse or key people to participate, but it's not a good idea to have a lot of extra folks. 4, the visit should be done at the office or home of the person you're interviewing. Any quiet place is okay. Obviously, doing it at the local coffee shop is not a good idea. You get too many interruptions and won't have a confidential interview. 5, most visits take about an hour or so. 6, in past BRE programs, most of the local businesses have agreed to participate. However, if you get one of the businesses that refuses, you can stress the potential benefits of the program and that it only takes an hour of their time. If they still refuse, please notify somebody on the BRE leadership team as soon as possible. Now let's consider some tips on setting the tone at the visit. 1, naturally, first you break the ice. 2, express the community's appreciation for the business's economic contributions to the local community. 3, review the purpose of the project, covering the information on the inside cover of the survey on sponsorship and goals and rules. 4, before going through the questions, be sure that the person you're visiting has a copy of the survey. There are 2 very important survey ground rules. 1, the survey results are confidential, except as required by law. Only averages or percentages are provided in the written reports. You as a visitor must not share any of the information you learn on the visits with others. 2, the skip it rule allows the business owner to skip any question they want. They don't even have to give a reason why. Now let's look at some tips for the person asking the questions. 1, ask every question on the interview guide form. Don't even skip ones you think that everybody knows the answers to, assuming you can just fill it in later. Yes, it's a double standard. The owner can elect to skip a question, but you shouldn't. 2, ask the questions exactly as worded. All of you will be tempted to change the wording on at least one question, but no matter how bad it seems, don't change it. If 6 of you change the wording on one question, we'll have as many as 7 different questions, and the results won't be comparable. Stick with the wording. If you want to then ask another question with a slightly different wording, that is okay. Write down both the new question and the new answer. 3, listen carefully. As a visitor, your job is to listen. All of us have points of view and biases, but if the BRE project is to be really useful, the visitors have to be willing to seek the opinions of business persons they're visiting without in any way trying to influence the answer. After asking a question, practice waiting for an answer. It helps if you count to 10, silently of course. This is one of the hardest things to do when interviewing someone, but often they need a few seconds to think about the best way to answer the question. People respond very favorably if you really listen to them. 4, if the respondent doesn't seem to understand the questions or pauses for a very long time, simply repeat the question. 5, never suggest an answer, even if you're positive you know what the answer is. 6, on the questions without any response categories, you might need to probe to get a complete picture. However, you're not trying to qualify as an investigative journalist. Rather, you're simply showing the respondent that you're willing to listen to a more complete discussion of these ideas, if they want to give it. A common probing question is, could you tell us a little more about that? 7, if you're a public official and the respondent complains about taxes or road maintenance, don't get defensive. You're there to learn about their opinions. If you start debating their points, some will stop sharing them with you. There will be opportunities later on to correct the record if necessary. 8, don't promise any solutions to problems they mention. You as a BRE volunteer have no formal authority and budget with which to solve problems. Don't promise specific solutions to problems, but you can promise that the BRE task force will look into it. Now we'll switch gears and look at tips for note-taking. Always circle responses, never check them. For example, which response is correct here? We never have this problem when circling answers as seen here. The local task force and leadership team can't read the minds of the businesses if the notes are incomplete. The notes must tell the full story. In the first example, a response, hopes to expand if conditions right, does not begin to tell a full story. The second example does a much better job. By listing the visitors' names and phone numbers on the front cover, it makes it easier for the coordinator to call you if there are questions about your notes. This is extremely important, especially if your notes don't tell the full story. You would think we could skip the final tip for the note taker. That is to write clearly. What would you do if you had to summarize this response? Okay, now let's consider tips for immediately after the visit. 1, after leaving the business, the 2 visitors should talk about any urgent concerns and make notes on the back cover. These notes might include plans to move or close the business, information needed for an expansion, or any other urgent problem. 2, return the survey as soon as possible to the project's visitation coordinator.